Redmond School Board workshop to order. All board members are present along with Superintendent Wagner. We have one item on our agenda for the workshop, and that's SiteLogic IQ update. So we should probably have entertain a motion to approve the workshop agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Schoenfelder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ossendorf. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Superintendent Wagner, Mr. Field.
I'll just do a quick tee up so they can maximize the time. So November, we talked about, not a facility study, but a enrollment study. Andy came in, presented what SiteLogic can offer. There were 16 different options. The board agreed to do kind of a diet facility study is what I would call it. So to look at Jefferson building as well as a deep dive, a pretty deep dive into our enrollment. So 44 minutes.
Here we go.
There we go.
Well, good evening, board. Thank you for having us tonight. I'll be very brief in our introductions. I'm Andy Fields. I'm with SiteLogic. I've been in front of the board before. I'm joined tonight with Nick, who is a development engineer from SiteLogic, and also Mike from Baird, who has helped us with the enrollment study. We've got quite a bit of information to get through tonight, and we know that you have a board meeting and there's a big basketball game on at 9 o'clock. So we want to make sure that we move quickly enough that that you get to everything you need to do tonight. So our agenda for this evening's presentation is to provide a little context behind the background, and there's one delayed there. Background and objectives. The Jefferson Building Facility Assessment Review. We're also going to talk about our enrollment study findings, potential next steps, and then answer any questions that you might have. So as we look at the background, again, when we came back here, I think it was in early November, around that time frame, the school board was looking at what can we do with the Jefferson building. And what was discussed at the board meeting was before you look at potential programming options that could be housed in the Jefferson building, what kind of condition is the building in and what might need to occur to make sure that you can have occupancy. So that's one of the things that our team has done. We've been able to look at that and we're going to provide information about the facility assessment. The other item was to look at enrollment trends. Enrollment is a predictor in a lot of things that we'll discuss tonight, but we're going to share a little bit more information on enrollment. And then as a board, we want to make sure that you have data. And so the information we're presenting tonight doesn't come in the form of solutions, but it's going to come in the form of data that allows you to start thinking bigger picture. What are the things that we think that we can do, or what's more data that we need in order to make really sound decisions. So those are our objectives for tonight. And as we start, districts across the state are looking at budget cuts. The legislative session, while there was dollars added, also provided some complexities. And so we're seeing the majority of the districts that we're partnering with are having to sustain cuts. And when you sustain cuts, it's complicated to think about how you're going to spend your precious resources. And so we like to work with districts because we know that as you have a general fund bucket of funds that come into your school district, you have two other buckets. You have your assigned dollars that you can only spend on the areas that you see the top bucket in, and then you have your unassigned. And so your buckets to manage your facilities come out of a very different fund that you have to manage your operations, your day-to-day operations. And so we like to make sure that that's clear because facilities become a priority as you look at making solid investments and making sure that you protect all the resources that you have. And as you talk about long-term planning, this is a stool that has four legs. And if you look at the areas that are on your right side of the screen, you have enrollment, facilities, budget, and programming. A school district can have a fantastic facility, but not have mapped out how they're going to afford programming. And you can have programming in a great facility and not have a good picture of your enrollment in the future, which gives you some predictability for your budget. All of those things need to come together in your strategic planning. It becomes a puzzle, so to speak, or a stool where you're trying to make sure that you get all parts together so you make the most informed decisions. As a reminder of SiteLogic, we are a single source for school districts. We have architects, engineers, project managers, and educational consultants. Our job is to give you the data and the information so you can make those decisions. When we look at our facility study, we start with the physical needs assessment. We know that infrastructure is important. You need to look at what kinds of things need to be addressed in the building before you look at programming options. And with your building, the Jefferson building, the one that we're studying tonight, it is an older building. It's full of character, but you want to make sure before you look at bringing students or community in that space, staff included, that it is sound and ready to have people occupy it. So we start off in our planning process with a physical and a facility needs assessment. You can see that there are other things that we do with school districts, but for the purpose of tonight, we're looking at just the physical needs of the building. Again, our process follows that comprehensive assessment that you're going to see tonight in the form of a report card, and also looking at some estimated costs to bring that building up to a condition to have people occupy it. For many of the board, you've seen this slide before, but when you walk into a building, and Red Wing High School is a perfect example, when you walk in here, you see the floors that look great. You see a gymnasium that's incredible. You see a lot of things that the public also sees. But what you don't see are some of those things that are behind the walls, on the roof, boilers, things that occupy a great deal of cost that you have to maintain and you have to prioritize in your long-term facilities planning. Our team comes in and looks at these categories to make sure that your building is sound. And tonight we'll review those with you. I'm going to turn it over to Nick so he can begin the assessment. Yep.
Let me drive.
I'll let you drive.
That way.
Yeah.
Can everybody see the laser pointer on the screen? Is that showing up all right? Okay. So I'll probably use that to point at what I'm talking about here. But the first place that we start our assessments is just with the building ages themselves. It helps us get an idea of where to start. And so the Jefferson building itself, the original building age is that big orange block on the bar chart. And then the blue dot is the average age of the building, original construction and additions. So looking at the building itself, original building was built in 1916 with an addition in 1937. Same thing for floors 1 and 2. And then the reason why building ages are important and why it's our starting point is what we do is we take all of the assets within the building and we compare them to the ASHRAE standard life expectancy for the individual assets. So you can see over on the right-hand side, the average age of life expectancy of boilers is what's pulled out here. So moving into the actual assets within the Jefferson building, at the bottom of this bar chart, we've got all of the different categories that we've assessed within this building. The blue bars are that industry standard average life expectancy. And then the red and orange bars are the actual age of the asset, red being where it exceeds that average life expectancy. And now average age doesn't tell the entire story. It's just a starting point. So we also look at all of these assets while we're in the building, assessing them and give them a grade from excellent or essentially brand new, beginning of their useful life, all the way through to alarm, which is that either the assets failed, failing, or just excessively beyond that expected useful life. So this is where it's going to get a little bit tough to see this, but these are all of your assets within the building plotted within a matrix that takes into account both that average life expectancy and the asset condition that we've assigned to it. So this gray column here is taking into account what we saw while we were out there, as well as the age of the systems. And summarizing it in an at a glance here in this pie chart, you can see that the Jefferson building has almost everything within caution, alert, and alarm. Caution being maybe 5 to 10 years of life expectancy left. You should plan towards replacing it. And then alert and alarm being those areas and things that you should look at replacing immediately. So typically we kind of look for a third between green, yellow, and then red and orange. But ultimately this building being the age that it is and the systems that are in it mostly falls into that alert and alarm category. And then based on the time we have, I've got a lot of detailed slides to go into. I'm going to hit on them at a really high level, but if anybody does want to dive into this, I'd be happy to schedule a Zoom meeting, come back at a different time, and really work through the details, both of the matrix that I showed and these slides. But in the interest of tonight, I'll just breeze through these fairly quickly. But the boiler system at the building, 58 years old, significantly beyond its expected useful life. It was steam at one point, got converted to hot water. So the building does have hot water distribution through it, not steam, which is a good thing. Pumping systems and piping systems within the building. The building really only has a 2-pipe system, which means that the heating and the cooling have to be done by the same distribution loop out and into the building. So the disadvantage of that is that you can only heat or cool. You can't do both at the same time, and it has to be manually switched over within the building. The distribution system itself is many years beyond its expected useful life. And then the pump systems that serve the distribution are right at their useful life. And as far as electrical systems go, these were replaced in 1995, along with some of the other systems within the building, approaching the end of their expected useful life. However, electrical systems are one of those things that, so long as you have the correct capacity, they just kind of work until they don't. So maybe a decent highlight here to take a look at that. It's not all doom and gloom within the building, but there's certainly things to prepare for potentially in the future. So that's the comprehensive asset assessment portion. I want to pause for questions really quick before I go any further. Anybody?
Questions?
Don't we have an Energy Star rating on the building? So where does that come from?
I will get there.
Okay.
I've got some utility data at the end that I want to talk to. So if we're okay, I'll wait till then.
Yep.
Mhm. Anybody else? So the indoor environment portion of the presentation here really just looks at how those assets support the learning environments themselves. And the first one we take a look at, really hot button issue when you hear IAQ, indoor air quality. So what are sources of poor indoor air quality? This pie chart summarizes what all of them are, and that biggest one being inadequate ventilation. So when you increase outdoor air ventilation, you improve student performance. And I've got a chart here that I really like to use. This is a study from 2013 done by Berkeley National Laboratories, which links fresh air introduced into spaces with human cognitive performance. So all these categories down here on the bottom, as you increase your ventilation within the spaces, you see greater human performance in all of these various different categories. And then just another thing to point out is, and factor into this, is building ventilation standards. So as the years have gone by, really just to summarize, outdoor air per person requirements have gone up. And the red arrow is generally where those units that I'll show you on the next slide fall into from where they were designed. So this is the HVAC map for your building. You've got a single zone air handler serving the gymnasium, and then you've got unit ventilators that serve all of the individual spaces throughout basement, first, and second floor. And so when we look at indoor air quality, typically the first place we go is CO2 readings, just to see how the systems are operating, how they're doing. However, at the Jefferson building, obviously, as you know, we don't have any occupants in it, so we can't take CO2 readings within the spaces. And then this is just we'll put data loggers within the spaces just to see how it behaves throughout the course of the day. Whereas this map is just instantaneous readings at one moment. So because we couldn't do that at the Jefferson building, we did the next best thing that we've got, which is the ventilation analysis to check if those systems by design can provide the correct amount of outside air. And between the air handling unit serving the gym, and then I've just got one unit ventilator on here that kind of represents them all because they're the same spec. By design, these systems actually can provide the correct amount of outdoor air ventilation, which is a good thing. And it's really, to summarize it without getting too technical, because there's 2 pipes that serve the building, so heating and cooling get done by the same set of pipes, the coil within the units that condition the air has to be sized for cooling, which requires a bigger coil to cool outside air versus heat outside air. The calcs have to get done off the heating side, so that outdoor air sized coil is large enough to provide satisfactory outdoor air. So based on the calcs, you should be good as far as indoor air quality goes within this building. However, because of the age of the control system at the building, we don't know if this is operating perfectly anymore. I've got a slide for the control system in a little bit here, but there's potential that that control system isn't operating correctly anymore. So just as we think towards maybe potential solutions, something that we could come back and investigate, looking further into if this might qualify for indoor air funding if the controls aren't allowing the systems to operate.
And maybe just a pause there. When we talk about indoor air quality funding, there are provisions in the Minnesota state funding codes that allow you to use long-term facility maintenance funds out of category 2 with board authority. So that means the board can make a decision to levy the taxpayers to improve the indoor air quality if the units or if what we're looking to replace qualifies. And so we only bring that up because that might be something that your board, certainly other boards have considered.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So as far as those unit ventilators themselves, picture on the top right here is what one of those units look like. They're hung from the ceiling. That one's in the cafeteria. And then as far as in the classrooms themselves, they're up above a drop ceiling and they're ducted to ceiling diffusers, kind of similar to what you see in here. 29 years old, they're significantly beyond their expected useful life. As far as the gym single zone air handler unit goes, same thing, replaced in 95, at its expected useful life for an air handler. And one thing that we did notice while we were on site is that the heating valve isn't working correctly. The unit was calling for heat, but all it was doing was blowing cold air. I think it was 40 degrees that day within the space. The chiller, 1995, again, significantly beyond its expected useful life. And then that control system that I was talking about. So controls are 23 years old, has really outdated graphics, kind of primitive control systems relative to some of the newer systems that give you significantly more control within the spaces. And then the other thing to note would be that there's no remote access. So to adjust these control systems, Alan and his team has to physically go to the building to adjust the controls. The next indoor environment factor that we look at is lighting. And the anecdote I like to use on lighting is just when it's bright, when it's sunny out, I feel like everybody has a lot more energy versus a dark gray, cloudy day. Everybody's a little more subdued and sleepy in some cases. The same sort of principle applies to classrooms. And so what we did was we took light level readings within all the spaces in the building. And what we found was that they are below the range that we typically like to see within classrooms. So those spaces are underlit. And then just to highlight the lighting systems themselves, there's a lot of different fixtures within the building. But the one thing to note here would be that they're all fluorescent style light fixtures. So there's no LED within this building. Classroom acoustics is another important part of the classroom environment. You think about how the students learn, most of that involves speech. And so thinking about those unit ventilators that are above the ceiling, what we did when they were running was we took acoustical readings within the spaces. And so typically what we like to see is yellow and a lot of green. In the case of those unit ventilators, we're seeing yellow and some red. And so to give you a kind of a reference of what the red is essentially, it's above 50 decibels. A human speaking is like 60 decibels. So you can imagine as the teacher's trying to teach the class, as those fans are rumbling above head, it's almost like another person is within the classroom speaking while the teacher's trying to teach. And then just last little bit here, aesthetics and building quality. So just taking a look at windows, they're at their expected useful life. Same sort of thing with the roof. Exterior doors, there's a few little areas where the door sweeps were starting to deteriorate down on the bottom. As far as the concrete goes around the facility, you can see a pretty large crack. I think that was on the north side of the building. And then these are the stairs out at the rear of the facility with a big chip taken out of them. The parking lots themselves are deteriorating pretty significantly, especially the one at the rear of the building. And then just to point out, there's a gravel lot on the north side of the building. Plumbing fixtures themselves, actually for their age, were in fantastic shape, with the exception of down here, the toilet that's in the kindergarten room. And then the one thing to note here, they're just all manual operation. As far as the hallway lockers go, these were really cool. I've never seen this before. They're pretty vintage. And this handle right here is meant to be operated by the teacher. And so you pull the locker and the one opens all of them and then shuts all of them. So it was probably really high tech at one point, but now maybe not so great if a student ends up lingering a little too long.
Nick, can you go to the last picture?
This one?
Yeah, if you look at the blue door in the bathrooms, I think one of the highlights for us in the tour is throughout your bathrooms on the mirrors and on doors, a teacher or an employee back in the day had left positive messaging for all your students that were using that building that was still there. And that's just, I mean, aside from doing an assessment on the facility and an enrollment study, I think the group of us just really enjoyed the love that staff had for kids in that building. It didn't hurt us that Therese was there too and showed us her room, but it was evident that there was a lot of care that went on in that building.
Thanks, Andy. Last couple things, hazardous materials, as far as what you've got within the building, there's some insulation contained around the boiler. And then the biggest thing to note here would be these adhered ceiling tiles. It's asbestos encapsulated in the glue pucks themselves. So as long as it's not disturbed, it's not any danger to anyone, but just something to consider. If you were to upgrade systems within the building, there'd be a pretty sizable asbestos abatement project. And I'm going to skip this one and go to the nice visuals of the flooring maps. So we've created flooring and ceiling maps, both with the type of flooring and then the actual graded condition. So the basement, there's some 9x9 asbestos tile down there. Again, not an issue as long as it's undisturbed. And then as we move on to the first and second floor, a lot of that rolled carpet is kind of in poor condition. There's some VCT tile that's not in great condition, and then same sort of story on the second floor for flooring. And then ceilings, a little bit better story here. That ACM tile that I noted is not beneath the drop ceiling in the cafeteria, but on the first and second floor it is. So you can see the 2x4 acoustical drop ceiling that we've got grades out at a C, most of the areas within the building. The second floor. And then the last portion is the facility optimization. So we took a look at your last 36 months of utility data, specifically electrical at this building. And what I saw was something I've never actually seen before as far as utility cost per square foot is extraordinarily low. So the last 3 years, it's 5 cents a square foot. And then the actual electric cost is a little over $1,500 a year based on that 3-year rolling average. And really that has to do with kind of twofold. One, there's a solar system connected to this building. So you're getting significant solar credit either monthly or bi-monthly back onto your utility bills, which is driving down that utility price of this building, helping it be significantly more energy efficient. And then the other thing is just because the building's unoccupied, the way that Alan has it set up, it's not necessarily bringing in outside air and wasting utilities on ventilating a building that no one's in. He's basically just keeping the temperature at a consistent, either something in the summer or something in the winter. Obviously, they'd be different, but that's where you're seeing kind of the significant utility savings. So the solar array and then just the fact that the building is unoccupied. And that should be, if this will flip over, everything I've got. So again, any questions? Otherwise, it's back to Andy.
Yeah. So again, the goal was to show you the depth of our facility study. There's a lot more information that we would be able to look at. We know that we're, slotted for 45 minutes tonight, but again, our charge was to give you the data. And so I think that you have the data there. This building has solid bones. It fills the need for some space that you're looking for with 36,000 square feet. Clearly, it's beloved in the community and the neighborhood. With that said, it is limited with accessibility, modern features, and functionality. The kitchen in there would need a lot of work. I mean, there's just a lot of things that come up. The critical infrastructure repairs required, so roof, parking lots, sidewalks, HVAC, MEP, and some asbestos. That's what we looked at putting prices to in this. And as we looked at that, when I met with your team earlier this week, it was at $9 million just for the critical infrastructure. Nothing that adds to programming. And then the reason why you're seeing 9.5 million right now is that we did get our estimates back for an elevator. It was a little less than we expected. Accessibility is something you would need to invest in. So students and staff would have access to all 3 floors. And that would be about $500,000 we're estimating. So it's a little less than we had projected. And again, I know I didn't mention it, but you're also looking at having to add some safe and secure entrances, which we haven't included in this kind of ballpark range. So that's our high level for the Jefferson building and the facility study. Any questions before we move on to some enrollment information?
That Energy Star rating is because of the solar system.
I think it could be for a lot of things. I think, the solar system does help out. There clearly could be some energy benefits, the way the building was constructed and so forth. And I think when Nick and I talked about this, we think that even with students in the building, you're still going to see lower cost per student on your utilities because of the factors that we've talked about. So,
I mean, we're typically looking at 50 cents a square foot for a standard building. For electrical, you're at 5 cents. So even with a modern system and people within that building, I think it's probably safe to say you'd be well with under that average range that we'd expect to see.
I was there in sixth grade and I remember those lockers and I thought they were standard. Yeah, they're teacher opened up, now vintage, so.
I think they're really cool. I enjoyed those.
So, yeah, they were, I remember them, all the lockers opened up, she goes, Peter, she goes.
Hopefully no one got left behind.
Thank you very much for the study.
Yep.
Enrollment.
Good evening. I'll try to keep this rolling. So we probably have, 100 more slides to show you on enrollment. And I think we chose 5, 6. So this is just saying that your staff sent us, we requested some student data. And of course, we asked for only records that included addresses. No names, grade levels, what have you, and what you could come up with. So one of the things we looked at was you'll see in this is homeschool. And in our wonderful system, we've tried a couple times in my 30 plus years of education so that maybe the state should be signing a student ID number to every person that's born so that we can track them across the state. And you'll kind of see this play out in why you kind of like that to get more data. But the goal of the study was just to say who's out, who's in, who lives here, and what's going on. Is there anything that we should be aware of with our enrollment? So with that, a couple data outliers to be aware of in the lower left-hand corner, we have 3 safe at home PO box addresses. That just means that they are going to be labeled. And if we map that for you, you'd see them downtown St. Paul, and you would be scratching your head and say, what are you doing, Michael? What are you showing me this for? 3 addresses in Hastings City, but verified that each of these residents are part of your school district, and 46 students without an identified attending school can be anywhere from elsewhere, non-public, or question mark identifiers. We'll see that come through too. So we went back and forth a couple times with data, and I think you're going to like some of this, what you're going to see. So there was 2,580 kids K through 12 in this study. 2,561 are resident students. Open enrollees in is 19. Open enrollees out is 375. So of that, on the far right-hand side, you can kind of see that your grade levels first through 12 range from 182 to 162 kids. Now that's especially nice in that you're one of the few districts where we see a very consistent pupil numbers per grade. We are not seeing this across the state. So you've had doom and gloom so far. So that's pretty good. When we skip now to the next one, we look at that percentage. And off to the right, you'll see something like resident capture rate. And resident capture rate, state average is 81.98%. So ever since they instituted open enrollment, school districts are just under 82% educating the people that are at their district. You're coming in at a resident capture rate of 85%, folks. So you're beating that capture rate. So that's a positive. When you look at homeschool numbers out or other out, of those 375 out, 144 are a homeschooled population and 231 are for elsewhere. We put this in here, not so much for you, but we sized every map the same in our visuals. And so you could see the county line in the blue coming out of Lake City as basically your southern border. And this is just a reminder of where your education facilities are located compared to your neighbors. So there we dot plotted your 2,561 students are dot plotted in blue. We then said, okay, where are our 144 homeschoolers located? In some of our other test districts, we see those homeschoolers on border edges, placed differently. Yours have a pretty good concentration of what I'd refer to as Red Wing proper. I don't see a big smattering outside. That's about 38% of the open enrollees are coming out of the homeschool. 101 open enrolled out are participating in the 5RO, TV, GCED programs. You can see that concentration once again, 26% are located pretty much Red Wing proper. We have 39 elsewhere, and because of how these people have to give an address or the timing of that once, we actually think maybe these are part-time or full-time 5RO kids could be lumped into this 101 as I flip back and forth. So this out elsewhere, we're thinking that that could be part of that byproduct, but those were the addresses we were given. And then there was a mention, I think Andy called me the other day and said, well, somebody mentioned that there's at least 100 students going out to Goodhue. And it's about 37. I think somebody else mentioned, well, they live down on our southern border. They live right where your mass of population is. Your neighbor to the north, Hastings, did a similar study to this 5 years ago. They thought they were losing a tremendous amount of students to Randolph, and they thought they were going to be looking at building a elementary on the southwest side of their district. Once they looked at the few of these pictures, they said, wait a minute, we're losing, I think it was 55 to 65% of their losses in elementary were Hastings within 2 miles of downtown. And they were going out to Randolph. So we try to put this visual picture to say, oh, here's some data for you when somebody says, oh, you're losing 100 kids down south. No, we're not. And we're losing them across the range of our district, not just a concentration. So how do people with school-age children feel about our district? Once again, positives. Over 85% of our residents send their kids to our district. Andy's going to pipe in here. Why not the other 15%? Why do 38.4% of our open enrollee parents elect to homeschool their children? Why do 26.9% elect to use those other alternative programs? Well, it's looking like your district has a want for these alternative programs. So, key takeaways. Capture rate good. Class size consistent. Open enrollee in is static with 19. We didn't show you the visual of that. You're getting them basically on the south, east, and southern border. Why does open enrollment gradually increase as we move up from K and we move forward? Is it grade configuration? Is it transitions? Is it program offerings?
To that point, across the board, what we thought was really relevant and that the board would want to hear is when you look at students in your open enrollment population that are coming into district. So they're coming from outside of your attendance boundaries. You typically have between 0 or 3 students per grade level. When you look at your open enrollment out, so students leaving Red Wing to go to another district or choosing another program, you start small in kindergarten and you progress to about 55 students in your senior high level. So that was something that stood out to us, and something that, asked the question, why is that? And that isn't an alarming number because you have a lot to celebrate. The fact that you have 85% of your students that are electing to stay in and being that far above state average is significant. And again, it gives you the chance by thinking about that enrollment. When you think again about that stool, you have the chance to plan knowing that you have consistent enrollment at your grade levels and that you're not losing a huge number of kids. It gives you some predictability that a lot of the districts that we partner with don't have that predictability. Again, and your homeschool students, it was really curious. It was consistent by grade level. you ranged between 9 and 14 students per grade level that elected to homeschool their children. So that's a very consistent figure. And again, as a planner, you look to those consistencies because you don't want to have anomalies. And so I think that there was a lot of consistency within the data we looked at for your school district. And again, your largest competition for students electing not to be enrolled that are in your attendance area, not to be elected to stay in your school district for their education, homeschool, online learning, and looking at Goodhue as an option. And so especially when you look at homeschool and learning online and some of those other options, to me as a former educator, it says alternate programming. What are some things that we can do that are different? It's not people that are upset, but they're looking for something different. And so then the question, for the board and the data brings out that question, is there anything we can do for them? What might we be able to do to help support students that want an alternate form of education? I don't have that answer for you, but I think it's a question that would be one that's good to consider. And so as we think about next steps, again, we're reminded of making sure that you've got a solid base of making sure that you are thinking about all parts of the stool. Enrollment, facilities are ones that we've examined, and facilities from a standpoint of one building, and all of those have direct impacts on the other legs of the stool. So the board tasked us with looking at what would we need to do to reopen the Jefferson building. So the question that we asked back to the board, or that we ask, is does the Jefferson building provide a viable solution to address Red Wing School District's current and future needs? Or might there be other options to consider? You can see attached to that is a $9.5 million critical infrastructure only. That doesn't include a lot of the other work to bring it up to a level that you would likely want to have. So those are considerations that you have to make, as with a lot of other considerations. So the question that we don't have written down here is, what other data can we provide to make sure that whatever you're choosing or electing to invest is at the right location, at the right place, and provides you what you need to fulfill your enrollment, your facilities, your budget, and your programming needs.
A lot of information right now. I think it's hard for us to identify anything further without taking time to
You bet.
dive into it and look at it more closely. So, anyone else have any questions or comments? Yes. Sure.
Were we also going to look at like a grade configuration in the different buildings and space for that with you guys?
Yeah, so we did look at a lot of different scenarios, and you have some healthy options. Space, we did a space study. We didn't include it in this because we wanted to really follow through what the board asked us, but it's hard for us as planners to not dig a little bit deeper and to examine what might some options be. So there are some options that involve how could you use the Jefferson building. There are also options that you could look at grade configuration. And those options, without going too deep into that, would involve, do you want your 8th grade at the high school? Or would you rather create a 6-8? And if you would rather create a 6-8, how could you use your elementary spaces? What we found pretty fascinating is that both of your elementary buildings are roughly the same size. You have one building that's 5,000 square feet bigger, which means one building has 3 grade levels right in it right now, and the other has 2 with some early childhood offering some courses there. But could you look at those spaces and to see what could you do with those that would create space at the high school to re-envision programming and so forth? You could look at grade configuration from having standalone K-5 buildings with early childhood options, or you could just look at potentially having a K-2 building, a 3-5 building, a 6-8 building, and a 9-12 building. So there are a lot of options. We don't say that this is the right solution, but we do think that you're in a good spot given, where your enrollment and stability is, and that you have the ability to look at these spaces and to say, how do we want them to be for our students? So you're in a good spot to be. I don't know if that answers your questions.
Yes.
But we can't reconfigure like K2, 3, 5 with the current sizes of those buildings.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right in your question, and so that's why we said if it's going to cost you X to redevelop the Jefferson building. You know, do you want more data to say what would the cost be to do some additions to elementary buildings or other sites in your district? And so again, our job isn't to come up with those solutions, but to make sure you know all of your options, you know, and to know all your options. You know, our team would love to get in your elementary schools and to see what kind of capabilities would you have to look at that. And so then you as a board would be able to look at the Jefferson data, your elementary schools data, and really make those decisions if that's something you wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that's been a huge push, you know, from our community, is trying to get fifth grade back into a grade school, eighth grade back into a middle school. And my thought was, we're just trying to figure out if the buildings were gonna be able to do that. So I'm not sure if you helped with that, other than putting all the proposals out, you know, I'm not sure I have a clear
Right,
answer if
right.
that's something that we can consider or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, and I do think you can consider it. And again, we just need permission for your board to go look at what are some opportunities within those two buildings.
I think on the flip side, if you think about, you've got 9.5 million of critical infrastructure. If you double that, you might have the shiniest, oldest new penny ever. So what, in my mind, on the finance side, what are you chasing with? Let's just call it 10 million. What are you chasing with 20 million?
Yeah.
What can you do with that 10 million or 20 million range at the four schools that are defined below? So then you balance that with what can you do at Jefferson versus what can you do at your four other schools? What's the best bang for your taxpayer dollars, regardless of where you're getting that source of revenue from?
And there's where you see the facilities, the budget, and the programming really be interconnected to your decision making.
Yeah, I mean, that makes good sense there, that 10 million to 20 million, and the 9.5 is just for the critical infrastructure
Yes.
of the Jefferson building, and that's a big number. Just to look at fixing some of the issues in the old building. It's gonna obviously be more because of the other things that we'd have to be looking at. Or find when you're in there, too, you know. We all know what old buildings do. They have memories, assets, and troubles, you know, those types of things, so. You have a question? Anybody else have anything other than we're gonna call it quits? You have a question, Ms. Rowe? No.
Comments
Okay.
more,
Go ahead.
rolling around in my head. So, I think we all knew before the study that Jefferson probably wasn't going to be a viable option for us to even consider, right? So we have a lot of conversation ahead of us about now what, right? Because we really don't need to hang on to it. It's just deteriorating day by day by day, right? And we've already had those conversations in the 8 years I've been on this board, but it still stands and we still own it and we have no plans. So I think we need to figure it out, do
Keep
something.
going with it.
The other thing is, I really do think that we've all heard loud and clear what you have said, that how do we get eighth grade back to the middle school and how do we reconfigure that? I think that's really where our priority is and has been. So I guess I'm a little bit disappointed that we've spent all this time, and thank you for doing this great analysis, but it really hasn't answered any of our concerns or questions. Or priorities.
Well, I think just out of respect to St. Logic, they did kind of like I said, a diet piece just to kind of demonstrate what they could do.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, they did bring that piece. I think for us, it was really kind of really ironing out too, like, what are our students at? For me, the big takeaway is what do we need to do to optimize programming to attract students to, which to me is positive. Hence, you know, the conversations we'll have to have after this presentation. It didn't necessarily give us the absolutes for the big conclusions, but
One of the things that I would offer up, and we wanted to show you what we're capable of. So if we're able to get into some other buildings, you know what you can get from us and how we're going to present our information. But I think when you look at a building that's as revered as the Jefferson Building, and if there ever is a decision whether you're going to remodel it or whether there are other decisions, the community is going to want to know that the board has done their work to understand what's involved. And so if anything, this does give you some real numbers and some numbers that are tied to assets that aren't subjective, but they're objective. So as a board, you can answer to your constituents, this is why we made this decision. It's just the first of probably many decisions to be made.
Andy, is there a way for board members or community members, or maybe some of the staff to actually get a deeper dive into because there's tons of information. They had 45 minutes to have to condense all of this, and there was just so much more that they could demonstrate. So is that something that is an option?
Yeah, we'd be more than willing to set up additional time to come out and talk to your staff about more of the data that we've collected. And even, what's been fun is just dreaming a little bit. We've had the chance to soak in the data of your school district. And as a former administrator of 18 years, you guys have some real potential, some ways to deeply impact the learning of current and future students. And so I think that's the excitement that we have as we've looked at it are the options. We've looked at a couple of pieces right now. We've been able to check a number of boxes. Now it's what are the next steps? How do we keep peeling back the layers of onion to figure out what the best options are?
And I think the grade configuration is one of the things we did, but we did talk about as a board, what it would take to do with Jefferson. What are we gonna do with Jefferson? How are we gonna, can we fix it? Should we do something else? We've sold it several times and we still own it. So we've had that discussion. And, but we needed something, and Andy and his team presented something, but you do make up great points. And we'd love to get into that, but that conversation we'll have as a board in the next few meetings to go forward. Because this is fresh, we should say it now.
And it definitely gives some clarity, as much as it hurts my heart. Because I think Jefferson is a very special thing.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a lot of money for the district.
But I think the grade configuration part of it, Jefferson kind of come
Right, together
as to how you go forward, or how or if you go forward. So, anything further for these guys here this evening? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For coming down, it was great information on the enrollment part, the Jefferson part, and a little discussion on the side on the grade configuration.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, you
I'll
bet.
entertain a motion to,
Oh.
sure. You
Make
have,
one final comment.
Sure.
We also can't lose track of Caldwell Family Center and their space needs. Because they are packed. And that is our first entry point to capturing kids to Redmond Public Schools.
Teresa, I'm glad you brought that up because that is one of the areas that we find in enrollment studies that are the easiest way to capture students is through getting students early and providing that support to families. And we know in Red Wing and a lot of the other communities that we support that it's hard to find early childhood care and the majority of the communities that we support. And so a lot of times districts are stepping up to find ways to help support their families. And that then moves forward into having trust with the school district that they send their kids to. So that's a really good point.
Thank you. Anything further?
Sorry.
Entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
Yeah.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Schoenfeld. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Bjornstedt. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We will start the board meeting at 6 P.M. Hello, Bob.
Evening, Jim. How are you?
Good, good. We'll be back in here. We'll try to run it through as quick as possible. We understand you have a 7 o'clock time frame. questions on it? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Moved by Ms. Rhodes, there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Overfelder. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Our educational plan's in the corner there. And then Ms. Overfelder will read our mission statement.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. And our next agenda item is a student and school showcase, Mr. Bagel.
All right, good evening. Thankfully, you only have to hear from me for a hot second here, and then you're going to hear from some much more entertaining people than me. So tonight I brought some helpers with me. So back at the beginning of the year, Erin McDonald, kindergarten teacher, approached me about doing some math buddies with some of our 7th grade friends. So I brought the gang with here, and they're going to talk a little bit about math buddies. All right. I'm going to sneak out of here. I want you guys in, all right?
Can you go up, tell us real loudly your first and last names, please?
Should
You go ahead
should I
first.
start it out for you? I'm Erin McDonald and I teach kindergarten at Sunnyside. This is where you,
Jackson Engberg,
nice job. And who are you?
Oakley Raider,
And who are you?
Mason Ski.
Well, thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Very nice to see you. You like school?
Yeah.
You like your teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
You like Mr. Bagel?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Of
good.
course.
Trifecta.
Of course.
Go ahead.
And I'm Heather
Yeah.
Finholm, or Mrs. Finney, as my students call me. And this year, Ms. McDonald and I had the privilege of collaborating to run a first ever pilot program of math buddies together. And I brought 2 of my 7th grade math buddies with. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
My name's Layden Johnson.
And my name is Ryder Wilkinson.
Thank you for coming. So what, go ahead, you got anything more you want to?
So you guys want to
Talk
share
about how it did.
something you enjoyed about math buddies?
Oh, I enjoyed hanging out with the kindergartners and teaching them math at the same time.
I enjoy doing the activities with them.
And how often did you do it? When did you start? It's been going on for months,
Once a month.
Well, once a month.
once a month?
Yeah. What was your favorite parts of math buddies? What kind of stuff did you really like doing?
Reading. Mostly reading.
Mostly doing the reading stuff. Did we make some leprechaun shops? That was pretty fun. You had to use some math to build them. We did some flashlight math, didn't we? That was around Groundhog's Day, so we did some 3D shapes. Did some pumpkin math. Yeah.
What is pumpkin math?
What did we do with our pumpkins?
We put a pumpkin in water and see if it sinks or floats.
Okay, could you put the kids in front of the camera? Do they want to be on
Jenny,
TV?
go
a
read
little
over
bit?
here.
Want to be on TV?
Mr. Coates, stand in front of that, right behind that chair.
Right behind the chair.
There you go.
See your foreheads.
Wave at us.
Just keep yourself.
All right. Exciting stuff. So,
So when you're a math buddy, are you always with the same, like, do you have the same big buddy and you have the same little buddy, or do you?
Yes, unless your buddy's gone.
You can do it in groups of 3 or 4, depending upon. We've kind of done a big array of different things, which has been pretty fun.
I think this is a great thing to do.
Builds
you know.
community.
Hopefully we can build on it and even do more.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Even
thank you for doing that. Really.
Even Mother Nature approved of math buddies. Because we didn't have to reschedule once.
At all, even in the
It's a
winter.
great one.
It was a great
one.
Yes, it was.
Do you guys do this after school or during school?
We do it during our math hour, which is 6 and 7.
So you walk from the middle school?
All the way to Sunnyside.
Great. Well, should we get a picture? You guys want to take the picture, taken? Is that your dad over there with the hat on? How's Grandpa Greg doing? He doing good? Okay.
You guys want to be in the picture? Sure. Everybody.
You get to come up here for a picture.
Come on, you two are big parts of it too. Come on.
Why don't you and Ryder just go ahead and maybe Neil?
Can we all get in here?
You should be.
Yeah, we're getting a picture.
Oh, Aaron, can you go in just a little bit? There we go. Okay, right here. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Thanks for coming. Hey, buddy. Thanks for coming. All right. Good to see you. Thank you very much again. Really, really wonderful. Recognitions and upcoming events. Sure, go right ahead.
Ms. Nikki Buck was nominated for an Indigenous People and Philanthropy Award for her work on the Honoring Code project.
Congratulations. Way to go. Anybody else have anything? Yes. Do we have we been at a regular meeting since we did the speech?
No.
I attended the speech program, speech showcase. Thank you. There was a lot of people up there at the H Pod, and I did one group where they had the group discussion. They had a great, I had to pick a topic and they talked about it. It was wonderful. Everybody's so excited up there. It was great event. And
We had two of our
yeah,
speech members went to state,
yeah,
Ellen Smith and Ken Fox.
it was a great night.
I also have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Teacher Appreciation Week,
Yep.
and thank you so much to all of our staff,
Teachers, yeah.
all of our teachers, all of the work that they every day, all day, beyond the school day. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody else have? Yes.
Isn't it also like Nutrition Services Day yesterday or?
Last Friday.
Friday was school lunch here.
Yeah.
Wednesday is school nurses day.
Thank you.
And we have prom this weekend. For those that have children going. Exciting time.
And we have a high school play coming up, the spring play, the
Next Thursday.
16th,
Yep.
next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
And,
in the little theater at the high school.
And they will be our next student showcase.
Oh, good. Anybody else have anything? All right, thank you. Public comment. We have, did you receive any emails? I did not. I have one potential. Does the person still want to speak? Okay, anybody else signed up back there? Mr. Bagel, can you take a peek, please?
Yes.
Do you want, anybody else want to speak? Please fill out the form then too, right there, and then you come on up here, okay? Can you give her a form, please, Mr. Bagel?
Yes. She signed it.
She signed it, okay, please, come on up, you're up, you're the only one. Oh, I better read yeah, I gotta read this thing too. All right, thank you for coming up here. The school board would like to provide interested community members an opportunity to provide appropriate public comment. We seriously consider all questions and concerns presented, but we'll follow protocols to ensure orderly operation of the meeting and the development of an appropriate response. Public may provide comment in person and sign in on arrival, or public comment may be shared by emailing a statement to J.R. Bryant, Bryant@rwps.org or mcwagner@rwps.org by noon the day of the meeting. The statement must include the writer's name and address. Upon review it with appropriate edits as per expectations outlined in the public comment portion of the school board agenda, the individual will be invited to attend virtually and read their statement to the board during the public comment portion of the agenda. The following guidelines will be followed during public comment. We expect the comments to be limited to 3 minutes per person, and that a representative be selected to speak on behalf of a group of individuals attending the meeting for the same topic. School board members will listen to the public comments but will not discuss the topic at the meeting. The superintendent and/or school board chair may provide a response outlining steps the school district has taken or will take to address the concerns. A summary of the school district actions in the response to public comment will be provided to the school board individuals submitting public comment and/or public at a later date as appropriate. We expect that comments remain respectful and appropriate and not identify any current or former students, their families, or staff members by name. All right, thank you. Please state your name and address and welcome.
Oh, my address. Wow. Yes. I'm Janice Erickson. My address is 1824 Edoka Street. I'm here tonight as a parent in the district. I have 6 kids, 4 of them attend school here. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have my voice heard tonight. I value all of your time. I know it's beautiful outside and we would rather be out there enjoying nature, but we got business to handle. And I'm here to say that when I first was going to move to this school district, people told me, don't do it. They're like, your kids are going to be labeled as bad kids. They told me that my kids are going to be bullied. They told me my kids are going to be put in special education, amongst other things. This is coming from trusted family and friends. So I was hesitant, but yet here I am. I decided to move forward with it. My husband wanted to move back to his homeland, so I supported him and I said, let's do it then. And when I got here, I was nervous because some of those things started to happen right away as soon as I got here. So I knew that there was a lot of work that needed to be done. So I got right to it and tried to help out as much as I can. I go to the classrooms, I help in the community, I try to be a voice for people who want to be here tonight, but for whatever reasons, they're not here. So I'm here to speak for other people as well. So just know that just because they're not in the room, there's a lot of people that would like to speak. And at some point, I think they will. I'm encouraging more people to try to come and share their voices and share their point of view and the troubles and the struggles that they're going through. There's so much change going on right now that it's hard to tell if we're on the good path or not. I feel strong still, and I believe in the work that we're doing. But I fear that bad things could happen and may happen if we lose some of our most valuable people. We've already lost some good people, and we all know that's really hard. We have to stay strong like warriors, education warriors, and fight for what is right. Our kids are the most important thing. I know that budgets are hard, and I know that there's a lot of things that need to be taken care of, but you also need to remain strong and smart in the decisions that you make. You need to keep the most valuable people, the people that work hard for us, the people that have our back to the fullest. We have really good people right now that I trust. And I hope to make a lot more friendships and partnerships and be a trusted ally with everybody in this room. Because we all want the same thing. We want to be like the best in the state. We want to be the smartest, strongest. All of our kids graduate from high school. All of our kids that reach their academic success, whatever that may be. We can do that. We have the capability to do that. We just need to hold on to what we have and take care of what we have in a good way. I'm here to say that I'm standing strong, that I believe fully in Allegra, as the Director of Teaching and Learning. She has been a beacon of light for our students, families, and community. I feel stronger with her here. I feel smarter when she's on our team. And I value her with my full heart. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be able to keep her here. Because wherever she goes, I'm going to move there too. Just kidding. I mean, maybe it could be that, but that's how much I believe in her, in the work that she does, in the care that she provides for her students. And I just want you guys to know that I'm always here for you. You know, I don't really hear from a lot of the school board, but I do have your back to the fullest, like all the time. I really want to be able to have the working relationship where we can talk about things and talk through things, and that when we unite, we get stronger together. So I'm just here to say that whatever happens, I wish everybody to have the strength in their heart, have the strength to do what's right, have the strength to be an education warrior, and know that I'm here as a friend, as a parent, as a colleague, whatever. I just want to be able to help all of our kids reach their academic success, help all of us be happy, healthy, strong community. So with that, I'll just say, I wish everyone good energy and good vibes. And I brought you all some wild violets. They're out my car. I picked them today in the yard. We ate some, sprinkled them on the salad. So I feel that connection to the earth, and I want to be able to share all that good energy with all of you. Miigwech. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much for your comment. Does anybody remember Janice? How do we get a hold of you? I didn't know we could. Didn't need to.
Well,
Do you have the number?
yeah,
I'll get it from Katie.
is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't.
I'd like to reach out to
you
you.
know,
Okay,
randomly gives people your phone number.
that's okay. Email's good too.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Anybody else want to speak? Okay, we'll move on. Administrative reports.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit of these things, but upcoming events, Redlands High School graduation is first at 7 p.m. Weather permitting, I can be on West Marshall Field. If not, we will start the running of the fans in the gym 3 days prior to keep us nice and cool. We didn't put in like any AC in the gym. Feather ceremony is May 17th at 5 p.m. at Redlands High School cafeteria. Our Hispanic graduation is May 22nd in the little theater at 11:30 a.m. River Bluff graduation is May 24th at 1:15. And Cairo graduation is June 1st. And 20, so lots of graduations coming up. We highlighted the school lunch superhero day last week. And let's see, employee 25 years of service and our retirees, the celebration that has been organized by Lisa Hanson is June 4th, 5 p.m. at the Anderson Center. All are invited to attend, so if they're early, because parking is granted, it's a good event to celebrate. Quick negotiations updates, this might come in later on, but we have EMRW, so our teacher contract has been ratified successfully, so we're seeking to get that. Our custodian contract has been ratified successfully. We are fine tuning our nutrition services webline language, and still in the work with our support personnel. So, we're getting close to negotiating that. Other programming updates are actually sitting in the packet. Questions, wonders?
Any questions on administration with the administrative report?
Thank you for putting all those graduations.
Yeah.
See that in one shot.
Well, thanks for doing that. Okay, next item is committee updates. Any committee updates?
I have some community ed ones.
Okay.
Some of what I have is a little bit late, just because of the timing of how things worked out, but there's the new summer programming available, and some of the highlights is that there are a lot of camp style classes, and there's a new kind of way of looking for things, like just by date. And I think also, yeah, okay, maybe it's that one. But so you were like, this is the week that we're gonna be in town or not gonna be in town. You can kind of have a little more at a glance view, things like that. Also, Kids Junction has about 300 kids registered for summer, which is huge. And so they need more staff. Because of the level that we have at Kids Junction, it requires a federal background check with DHS, which means we have to go to either Lakeville or Woodbury to get fingerprinted. So sometimes that can be kind of a barrier. But if you reach out, if you're interested in working for Kids Junction over the summer, if you reach out, the staff at Community Ed can help kind of navigate that process. Those are the highlights.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else have anything?
District Equity and Inclusion, DEI. Well, not very many people showed up, but it's very disappointing, and it's like quarterly, you know, and then, it started what I found out was it started 6 years ago with Jess Whitcomb. And then this was given to us, it was responding to racial and biased harm protocol policy or something. And then I was talking with Therese, you know, I would like to do a workshop and deep dive in this, but here's where I see the problem, where we have oodles of problem with racism. So it's not just racism, it's biased harm that conduct speech against the federally protected classes, race, religion, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and age and disability. So we can't tackle the racism because we're just sounded out by everything else that falls behind us, right? So I think all these things are very important and we need to individualize them in order to tackle this problem. So I would love, as a board, Therese did send me something that the district has too, but I would love to see a racial bias protocol as a policy before I depart my term on school board. But that's all that it was a really interesting meeting, but I really appreciate Tremaine coming and giving his insight on all this, so.
Okay, anything else? Any other committees? Nikki?
No, that was it for me.
Anybody else?
Yeah, District Advisory Council talked about the cell phone policy, and we'll be getting information tonight about that. I also was able to go to the APAC meeting, and that was discussion about graduation and budgeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to consent.
Finance
Oh, I'm sorry.
Committee, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Finance Committee.
Yeah.
So we had a meeting today with Rachel and I and Jennifer, Martina, and Lisa Ryder, and I'm deferring to Lisa.
I'll tee you up. I like to share my screen. This is kind of the prequel kind of setting us up with conversations for today. If you're sitting in the audience, we did we figured this out, and we also placed it in the packet as an agenda item. I don't know if you can see it. So just a little bit of a process. Obviously, we've been looking at the budget for quite some time. We met with principals as a group, district leaders as a group. Principals individually came back to the table. One of the ideas that came from that was to have a public forum. So we had a community forum at the high school, and we also sent out a survey monkey. Here you can see the results specifically from the survey that was digital. 229 respondents. At the community forum, we had 41 respondents. We had quite a spread of those that completed the survey monkey. So they were from teachers, administrators, support personnel, parents, guardians, community members, residents with children, residents without, students current or previous, and then other. I thought it was interesting to look at the others. We had a lot of grandmas and grandpas that put that in as their title, so I was really excited about that. Community administrators, so city council members were filling this out. Previous students filled it out as well, so I was pretty pleased with the turnout. What I tried to do is, because we had so many responses, is actually have themes pulled out. And so, of course, we started with what do we believe we want to see the programs and services elevate for next generation Red Wing. Some themes, and I'll pull out the themes for all of you, but again, it is available for you in the board packet. Continued work with our equity, similar to what you was looking at with our racial harm and bias protocol. Looking at how we work together to ensure that we are responding to the needs of all students. And then continued community engagement to support our underrepresented communities, specifically our BIPOCs, our Black, Indigenous, and people of color. There was quite significant response to be responsive to specifically our African American communities. So we have our Hispanic outreach with NASA, with other groups, but our BSU is really looking for some more representation and visibility in our schools. So working with our BSU is very important, as well as our families and community members of color. Additionally, there was a lot of call for holding students and families accountable for our disciplinary issues that come to the surface. And then for administrators to also take a firmer stand on some of those things that are being presented. So again, that was the first question. The other few highlights were educational support. So we're looking at our advanced placement, our honors, options, and pursuing challenging coursework. In addition, there was a lot of comments about our letters training and just really increasing our focus on literacy. So staying true to the legislative request for us to educate our teachers in the skills for the science of reading and literacy from very early on. And then looking at our advanced specialized education, so our technical and vocational alternative programming, our internship, our flight paths that we have, just to continue to elevate the opportunities for students to have those before they leave high school. The second question that we did pose were about where we believe we could reduce or eliminate to make more efficient cuts in the budgets. Some themes, of course, administration, efficiency, and resource allocation. So there's a concern there is that the administrative staff specifically asked the district office and other component pieces that we took a look at our roles and responsibilities and whether or not we can put aside. Specifically to call out positions, administrative positions, as superintendent, assistant coach, and other extra administrators. I will go in the space just to be fully transparent, including communications, human resources, tech and integration, just to name it. And so that we could prioritize smaller class sizes and keep quality. We took a look at responsible about our athletic programs and not necessarily just fees, but really looking specifically at sports and where we could right size for participation rates, coaching, assistant coaches, and then some recommendations for these programs so we get cooperative arrangements as well. Our feedback also included behaviors and support services. So, taking the opportunity to look at some of the behaviors that tend to elevate or present in our various buildings and how to respond with more efficient counseling, security services, and to interact with issues that opportunities or programs don't address effectively. Innovation, educational practices, so looking at VAR and whether or not that we have the biggest thing for building assets, reducing risk. Flexible learning time, what does that look like with iTime, which is actually directly aligned to our VAR for building as well. And then looking at new coaches and curriculum development, learning methodologies, and reporting systems. So those are some suggestions. The third question, do you have any suggestions or ideas for alternative ways to address the budget deficit while minimizing the impact on students and staff? Of course, again, looking at staff and program cuts, as opposed to cutting student programs, how do we ensure that they're responsive to which staff positions we are reducing? And prioritize retaining essential staff, preserving student programs. Transparency and accountability. That was a concern that came up quite consistently with upper management positions, particularly with the themes that came out of those district office level staff and programs. There's a great call for scrutiny on high salary positions to push our accountability on spending. Evaluation of outsourced initiatives, so again, looking at the bar model and its impacts and efficiencies related directly correlated to the costs. Evaluate the effectiveness and cost efficiencies of programs like our PSEO options, our 5.0, and then look at if those resources can be redirected to core infrastructure, so we can look at our curriculum needs internally in our tier 1 instruction. And then additionally to call and examine the right resources to offset costs to ensure our financial sustainability. Retention of enrichment programs. Go through these a little quicker. Look at our class size concerns. Obviously, class size, the promises that have been made in the past, and we're looking at how our lower levels are actually being responsive to student-to-teacher ratio. There are threats to enroll our children elsewhere. Class sizes are not addressed. That came up pretty consistently. And that was a high concern for many of our respondents and students. The last question was just any other feedback related to the budget cuts for Regling. Again, respondents were shocked and concerned over the district's deficits in light of the referendums that we passed specifically last year and that are funded through our levies and property taxes. Trust in communication, so the perception that the community's trust in the school district has eroded over the last decade, particularly with promise funds and certain initiatives that never transpired. Suggestions are made for clear communication with employees and the community about budgetary decisions and their implications. Revenue generation and resource utilization, so optimizing our revenue generation. One specific, this must have come up quite a bit because this is like how many times did the word actually come up, but many times there was discussion about vending machines, our school hours, and how we capture the potential revenue for students. Although there is some USD complications with keeping vending machines open, so some of that is just understanding how that works. Prioritizing student needs over adult preferences to consider the potential impact for budget decisions. And then again, family supporting the school system. Talked a little bit about discipline and safety concerns, so looking at the Millard High School, how are we looking at disrespectful bullying type behaviors towards teachers and the lack of consequences. Safety concerns again were rose to the top. And then just accountability and behavior management, so holding students accountable for their behaviors. And then when concerns are raised, for students understanding the consequences and then having effective behavior management. So some of those spilled out several times. Again, this is a compilation of 229 responses. The board forum or the community forum that we did have we collected all of those are included here for the data. That ended up being a little bit more conversational style, so our table hosts were fronting for the biggest thing that presented. So as we sat down as a team, your superintendent-elect was also part of those conversations, so know that he is apprised of all of the different things that we take into consideration to minimize the impact on students and teachers to the best of our ability. And then we took several deep dives into what else could be preserved or eliminate to make sure that we're making the best decisions, not only for our taxpayers, but I think about how our kids are the casualty. And by making hard decisions for what kind of teachers, what I always say is bird's eye, worm's eye is a big deal. It's a big deal to me not to listen to the community and think about the cuts we have to do administratively, which always connects to people. But sadly, the business side of being superintendent is really hard. And so, these conversations are just easy. So understand that this information was pivotal in us making decisions that we made. It doesn't mean that we think any less of any person or program. It's just that we have to get the bottom dollar. We have a little bit more work to do based on what Lisa is able to present tonight. But we're very thoughtful. I felt like we were very thoughtful in what we could do to preserve our kids and teaching staff to the best of our ability. So I'm teeing this up for you, Lisa.
Okay.
So we're gonna go a little bit deeper.
Any questions by anybody before Ms. Ryder starts serving? presentation? No? Okay, go ahead.
Lisa, will you pull up the document then, please?
Might want to just introduce yourself, people out there watching, please.
Sure, thank you. Lisa Ryder, Director of Finance and Operations for Red Wing Public Schools. And we're going to continue our conversation of where we're at in the process of identifying budget adjustments that will help to reduce the projected gap that we have for the fiscal year 25 budget as we move towards the board adopting that by the end of June of 2024 for the fiscal year 2025. So what you see on the screen is essentially very similar information to what you've heard from us before, with a little more detail with regard to the types of positions. And so there's a column on the left-hand side that shows the number of equivalent FTEs, and that can mean something different depending upon whether, say, it's a teacher position or whether it's an educational assistant position, or what that might look like with regard to the dollar amounts. So you see the dollar amounts then that are identified as what we're including in our quest to find this gap that we're trying to fill. So under the, after the description to the right then is some of the positions you will see are retirements. Some of them are resignations we've already received. Some of them are probationary releases or non-renewals. And so we've indicated that so that that could be a better understood item. And then to the far right is going to be the type of position or contract that they're falling under, okay? So as we run through this, I have broken this down for the first part here. This is talking about our equivalent number of FTEs for schools and sites. We had talked initially about 15.6 FTEs, full-time equivalents, and we are now looking out before you 22.33 as it took more FTEs to get to the dollar amount we were searching for. And so as you take a look at this, you have Sunnyside Elementary School, you have Burnside Elementary School, then the middle school, Twin Bluff, and Red Wing High School. They are grouped in those order. You can see the various different positions that are included. We have shared much of this with regard to just totals, but this is kind of laying out the types of positions that we're talking about. I'd be happy to answer any questions that are related to that. I wonder if you would like for me to pause. We do have a section also for Tower View, as Tower View will be coming back under the Red Wing operations as we move into fiscal year 25. And what this reflects is compared to the service or the types of positions that were in the past facilitated either by our own budget and or GCED's budget towards Tower View services. This is a reflection of a 1.6 reduction from that. And we're working kind of from here's the dollars that were spent before and then reducing by this amount to bring us down to a more palatable dollar amount for the cost of services that we will be able to manage on our own with a certain number of assumptions for number of FTEs. So that is the list of the various different positions at the sites, school sites. And as I mentioned, 22.33 FTEs. That total dollar amount is now at $1,478,589. These are all projected dollars for 25, and these are assumptions made as to like when you get down to it, some of these are a matter of, yes, this person may have retired and they were a 1.0, but if we needed a 0.2 still added back in order to cover the number of sections, then you're only going to see a 0.8. Does that make sense? So these have netted with whatever was otherwise going to need to be added because a full person's gone. Does that make sense? All right, so that this is our attempt at trying to identify then what does that look like for each of the different school sites. Lisa, if you could move forward to the next part of the page. Now we're moving into conversations regarding some of the district-wide positions that we had talked initially, most as a group. And so what you're going to find here, this is about the equivalent of $370,000. It does involve 4 equivalent FTEs. We have some dollars set aside here for the reduction by condensing our buildings and grounds positions, a vacancy position that we would not fill and would work to have others cover for that position. Restructure of our teaching and learning positions. which does involve non-renewal and the reflection of a dollar amount that is the lesser of the two. A reduction of our district receptionist position, which will require that the rest of our folks in the office will need to assist in covering for that. And we will also be asking for assistance from community education to make all of those responsibilities get completed. And then we have a reduction or reducing our tech integrationist formalizing the tech support position. So we currently have 2 positions, of which we're going to reduce down to the 1. And their focus is going to be primarily on Chromebooks as well as real technical needs that there are across the district, not so much on tech integrationists with the instruction lens. Okay. Then we have an elimination of our frontline budget analytics that we would no longer have available to us moving forward. We'd find other means to share that information with you. We would reduce our copier. We already have reduced our copier leases through the renewals that we did have come due at this past spring, which has resulted in an annual savings of $20,000. So the other change that has occurred and would be moving forward, a part of this process, it is $0, but it is the elimination of our school management services consulting that we currently have doing accounting and accounts payable for us. That beginning July 1, we would have fully handled by our district accountant that's been recently hired to handle those things internally. We will still utilize the rest of our staff to assist with the separation of segregation of duties, things that you can't have one person do all of. You can't have the same person bill the vendor as who's paying those bills, and feel confident that you don't have some potential there for potential fraud or something of that nature. So that's what we call segregation of duties. So we're going to use other people within our office to assist with those needs as well, which in the past, having had 2 different people doing those things, gave us a little bit of leeway there. So we'll create our own that way. That is a summary of what exactly the district-wide office adjustments include. The next section that we would move to is the section that is our athletic and activity revenue generation, which you have heard and seen before. No changes since we last discussed. And so those are laid out in summary form, as well as on the expenditure side for the athletics and activities, some of the positions then that would not be run in the fiscal year 25 budget. And our last section of this report is kind of the other items, of which I had grouped some of them with subgroups of supply budgets, for example, that were non-instructional and those that were instructional. You heard before the $160,000 that's still on our list for increasing walking distance. You see removal of carryovers, as I mentioned before. You see some supply budgets, whether it's special ed, travel, consulting, instructional. You see snow removal and gas and oil budgets being reduced, and you see LTFM expenditures being matched with the revenue and reducing those expenses. So in total, that's another $333,380. All total, this comes to $2,281,623, which is approximately $51,878 greater than the gap that we are projecting. But that is inclusive of all these items that you see on this list. But we're hoping to bring to you just a little more detail so that you'd understand a little bit more fully exactly what was involved in those categories. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just, some of the feedback we got from the public in the surveys was lovely. And that they just ran a second, or they voted for another continuing the levy. And I happened to be in the process of watching board meetings and trying to figure out if I wanted to be sitting where I'm sitting. And so before Karsten left and the board was discussing, do we go for a new referendum or do we try to extend what we currently have? Or we could bump it up even a little bit more. And the conversation at the time, Karsten said, if we just extend this, it is not going to be enough to continue all these things that we started. So I just want to make sure that people understand. And then when Frank was here, it came up again in the summer. What are we going to do? And he said the same thing. You aren't going to, the public needs to understand that this is not enough. And I don't know if those people that were here then, if you guys recall those conversations, but if we're still going, if we don't, we're gonna have to make deep, deep cuts if we don't extend it. And even extending it, we still have to make cuts. And so I just want people to know that the initial referendum, promises were made and kept, but it's not enough. So that's all. Thanks.
Go ahead.
I think we probably have to have a discussion as a board about the extending the walking distance, which is listed on here as a $160,000 cut, if that's something, we had kind of started talking about it at our workshop and some opinions on it, but because that will probably affect how you do things.
Before that, if we could, well, I've said at the forums, there was conversation about GCED. We pay GCED a lot of money. And I'm ready to go forward with our own special ed directors. Go with one instead of two. Our group, we spend a lot of money there, we're not even looking at it. We need to look at that. We have somebody there that in that position is not even licensed, serving our students. We pay that. That's not right. So we want our money back. The other thing is we're paying GCED 1.2 ADM that we get for transportation, athletics, activities, and other things, and they take it all. We don't get the 0.2. We'll get back, we get something back at the end of the year. We heard all that at the last finance. So I'm ready to go forward with one. That would be some savings that we could use towards the bus. So, especially since in January, I was giving a job description for them. They report to this person here. They don't, they refuse or won't. We need to bring the person in-house. Period. We can do it. It works for us, does it for us. We bet one. If we need two down the road, we can do it. I'm saying we suggest we get that. That'll be a savings for us too. I'm ready to go forward with that. And I can go on more, but it doesn't do any good. You know what I feel.
I want to clarify, it's 5RO where we're getting charged for 1.2.
Right, excuse me, you're right.
So people know that. This is not our special ed programming.
It's the 5RO.
It's students that are served in.
So I'm ready to go forward July 1 with that, to save some money for our staff and our students that we serve here. And I was at the finance meeting with Jennifer, Rachel, and Reese. Did I hear it right, that a couple schools couldn't fill a full-time position in GCED, paying part of their salary of a staff member?
For 5RO.
No, for their school. A couple, I heard that right?
Review business, right?
Oh.
And so, I mean, we're paying that too, and we can't fill our positions. So let's have that conversation. Let's have those honest, open conversations with that. I'm ready to do that. And I want to do it sooner than later. Our staff deserves that, our kids deserve that, our community deserves that. That was honest, open discussions. So, yes.
I think it's really important to also point out that maybe not everybody understands or knows, but, when we were making those decisions back in the day about do we raise the levy or keep it at the same, the taxes, and we did the flat renewal, nobody could predict at that time of the decision all of the unfunded mandates that were coming down from the legislature. And the huge, enormous increase in costs for insurance that our district is having to pay out, and of course, our staff as well. Like it is a huge problem, and I just want people to understand that this is not, these cuts, these deep cuts, are not because of mismanagement of funds. It's because we have been tasked with paying a whole lot more that was never, that we didn't get a whole lot of time to prepare for. And we have talked at length about those mandated funding things, and it hurts so much to have these conversations, and I just want our community to know that none of this is taken lightly, and I appreciate our staff having to make these extremely difficult decisions, and putting forth a recommendation that we will be rolling on. Do we have a date yet on when those final?
The final budget?
Yeah.
I would guess it'd be the second meeting in June. I want to thank, I wrote a couple things down, I forgot this, but you hit a couple. 17% insurance increase. Transportation costs, are we double digits on that?
Yes.
Double digit increase on our next year's transportation costs. And the state was kind enough to up the people in St. Paul to give us 2% for next year, for the calendar year. Inflation is what? We get 2%. So as much as we, I'm gonna whine a little bit about it, is they could do better up there. They're the ones that, through the good wisdom, they think they have the right funding and all that for us, and they need to do more for everyone in the state. Majority of the schools in the state of Minnesota are facing budget deficits. We're not alone. Thank you. I'm done. Yes.
Lisa, would you be able at this time to kind of go back through those different cuts and kind of explain like the practical or like the real life applications of what that's going to mean, right? Like if we're cutting these, like what educational programs are getting cut, or like with the how the teaching and learning is getting restructured, what that looks like what these mean in real life.
So when it comes to the sites, the school sites, those would be the principals who will decide exactly how they're going to utilize the FTEs they have remaining to be able to complete their schedules, right? And so at an elementary level, that's going to look differently than at the secondary level. And a lot of that will depend upon their projected enrollments as they have coming in. Kindergarten, as we know, is always a big question mark, right? And so that's something that we did err on the side of caution in not necessarily reducing there, even though it might have been borderline, potentially one place you would, right? So that's all part of what now needs to be determined by each of the different school sites as to exactly what they're going to do with the remaining. When it comes to the secondary, now there you have registrations that are occurring, and I can say that as we work through this, there was quite a bit of conversation with principals with regard to what that might mean for them. Although I can't tell you right now what those end results are going to exactly look like, because that is too soon in the process for them to have that all finalized at this point in time. Our next steps overall are to go ahead and now begin the line item budget that needs to be conducted or completed so that the totals can come to you for approval at the end of June. Given this list, this is where I'll start, and we will work towards creating this with these assumptions. When it comes to, as you know, this is like a broad brush attempt at figuring out what those costs are going to be for the future, right? And so as we get into the line item details, there may be some positions, for example, that will actually be removed from our expenditures, but I'm also going to reduce the revenues because those are positions that GCD will no longer be reimbursing us for because now they're tower reviewing under ours, right? So it's those kinds of things that your revenues and total expenditures that you've seen so far are going to change, right? But it's up to me to get that line item budget done with all the people that are remaining, then identified. Principals will make decisions about who's going to cover which program areas and courses and grade levels. And with that information, then we'll place the proper codes on those folks. And so that's the work that has to get done here in a few weeks and trying to get that prepared for you so that you have totals that you can then approve. In the meantime, I know you're looking for more information with regard to the transportation, and I have put emails out regarding that, and we will hopefully have that for the 20th meeting so that you have that information to weigh as well. And we'll just keep working at identifying exactly what those schedules are going to look like at the school sites. I'm sure there could still be changes that will occur by principals between even the time that you approve totals and by the time we get to next fall, right? When it comes to some of the district-wide things, I think we can speak to some of that more in detail. We already have a vacancy in one of our buildings and grounds positions, and at this point in time, we're just not going to fill it. And we're going to ask that others assist in making sure that those tasks get accomplished until we have a better handle on exactly where we want to go with that. That's one of them that it might save some money up front, but it's also in areas that we may like backfill. Like some of those things have to get done. The summer ice, if it's going to happen, it's going to need someone doing it. So it's not to say that that's not going to happen. It's to say that we just need to have that occur by other people that are currently available to us. The restructure of the teaching and learning positions, right now we have 2 positions, and we'd be looking at creating just the 1 position that's going to then serve the needs of our teaching and learning across the district. Our district receptionist position is a straight out reduction.
Do you know what the class size targets are that are used?
So when we started this, I'd have to pull that information up to have it more exact, but we utilized at the very beginning, we talked about our projected enrollment, and then we talked about those class sizes that we were heading towards. We know that given, if I just did the straight numbers and considered the number of equivalent students that were not necessarily in our classroom seats, but rather were enrolled in 5RO, we did not meet the mark of making those class size adjustments to right size fully across all of the grade levels, okay? Some of them were close, but like in the high school, for example, we still have, the numbers aren't going to pan out that way. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have many courses that do require smaller numbers of people, either it's because of safety, size of the space, and or the content, right? We also know that there's, in some of the cases, we know that the numbers we were working off from for the elementary grades, for example, they are higher than what's been used in the past or what we're currently experiencing because we have been somewhat overstaffed for the number of students that we've had for this past year, for example, in the various different grade levels. I can bring back to you the exact numbers we're going to be talking about now that we have this part, but the reality is when we're talking those class size ratios, we're talking just straight out classroom teachers. We are not talking about the support systems. I can say that when principals sat down to work with us, this was the fact that was the conversation was largely around how can we keep them in front of kids more than not, and how can we try and keep this away from kids. The challenge is we're at a point where I don't know how we do that. We are bare bones. I don't disagree. It's a question now of how do we just try and balance this budget. And as I get into this and line item things and we find if there's a room or something, well, then there's some things that we can make other decisions around. But at this point in time, this is all based on estimates.
In terms of secondary, so like high school, registration is just finished up. So we had some increases in some courses. So we had to respond accordingly so that students could continue in, for example, foreign language. And other electives, because as we noted in like the facility and student enrollment, if we don't have something that attracts students here, and we're cutting industrial text or the arts that are super underfunded, it doesn't make us really attractive. So we're trying to think through that thoughtfully too, and with the numbers of the courses that students are registering.
So Lisa, I want to make sure I understand what you said. So you said considering on the elementary level in class size targets, you said there was one way where we didn't hit the targets. And I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, you said if we consider the kids who are currently enrolled in homeschool or 5RO, if we put them back in then we don't make the targets. Is that what I was understanding?
Let me clarify that a little bit. You have two different levels and they function very differently, right? So in approaching this, I'd say our elementary schools came very close to meeting the class size ratios that we talked about for elementary grades. As I mentioned, kindergarten, borderline, right? So it depends on where those numbers really come in. Other grade levels, very, very close to the class size ratios we talked about with you. We might be a little shy of actually meeting that larger number, okay? When you talk about secondary, where we have had quite a bit more enrollment in the 5RO at the 1 to 6 different courses, not the full time, then we have a larger number of students that we currently don't see in our seats. And so if you were to subtract that equivalent number out of your, say, high school enrollment, you would expect that we'd be cutting far deeper than we did. And that's where I'm saying we didn't quite hit that mark. Does that make better sense?
I forgot one more thing. The Indian Ed Director position, we talked about some grant opportunities. We're looking at grants. Do we help on that? Where are we at on that? Because I think it'd be very helpful if we could secure some grants. And looking at budget cuts, there's two different ways: either increase your revenue or to cut your expenses. So if we can look at some grant opportunities for that position, for that group of students, that would be certainly helpful for all of us.
Yes. So there are 3 main sources of revenue we plan for 25 with regard to the Indian Ed Director position. And we've freed up space for that then with the positions that have been identified thus far. They didn't necessarily list reductions for those positions because we have the addition. So you don't see me adding in the Ed Director position on this list as an add. And so the reductions that we're making are reflected in non-renewals and other spaces, but they don't result on a list here. Does this make sense? So it's kind of a net effect is what you're looking at before you now. And so because we know we are adding this, we did have to make some adjustments to make that balance because we don't have additional revenue sources to my knowledge, but we have current grant funding that is available that we can utilize for this position moving forward.
We also talked about additional grant.
Grants pending. The issue with grants pending is there's no guarantee that we actually get
Right.
the grant. That's what's the thing. So I can't promise a position or any of the stuff that we get it. But
Okay. Does that have anything else? Yes, Ms. Rowe.
Different conversation for a different day, but at some point this board should really start talking about how do we increase that revenue. I know we said we would go out for a straight renewal the last time, with the caveat that if we need to go back to the voters, we certainly can, and that's always an option. And obviously, we can't sustain a fully operating school district making these kind of deep cuts year after year.
Right.
And if we want to reach our reconfiguration goals,
Right.
that would be hard.
So I think we could
That
add that
sounds-
to our
I mean,
future
Yep.
conversations, that would be great.
Ms. Buck brought up the topic for workshop. That'd be another topic for workshop too.
I think another topic for the workshop might just an overview of impact data is going to be very important. For Reading, it has never been assigned for. It's something that would be significant in terms of the amount of money and the way the general fund. So I've talked to a lot of you about that, but that's something that I would say stay the course with.
Okay, I'll be on the big conversation. Good point. Anything further? Ms. Sullivan? Lieutenant Wagner? Board members? Go on then, there's nothing further. Consent agenda. Anybody wish to pull anything off the consent agenda?
Can I just pull number 3 for a quick question?
Number 3, sure.
The whole thing?
Yeah, pull the whole thing. For now. Anybody else have anything? I will entertain a motion to approve 1, 2, 4, and 5. Moved by Ms. Rhodes, is there a second? Second by Mr. Yornsted. Any further discussion on those items? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 3, Ms. Rhodes.
I just have a question about the Lola, did you say media and technology assistant? I've never heard of that before. So I'm curious on what that is under the new hires.
I talked loosely to it, but Patrick can jump in. So, we have 2 EA positions that were merged, correct?
That is correct.
Essentially, the media tech position that Lola is making.
Media Tech was actually a former employee that resigned about 2 months ago, and we've been covering it with Michael Hammer and Nate filling in on occasion. Lola was my student support. I don't know. I keep saying I don't know. Student monitor position, and she applied to the tech media position, and then took that over, leaving the student monitor position open.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I think there's missing a comma, which makes it look like it's
Well,
like an
I know, it
yeah,
sounded like a really great company, you know, you're hiring, I'm like, I don't need to know what's this. Thank you, Lola.
All right, is there, what does the board wish to do about number 3 on the consent agenda?
I move to approve number 3 as presented.
Ms. Rose moves to approve number 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ossendorf. Any other questions on number 3? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next thing is donations and grants.
All right.
Superintendent Wagner.
You're gonna hear from me for a while here, and I may go through some names, so I apologize. Red Wing High School Robotics Club in the amount of $1,000 was donated by Michael Chinks. I'm really sorry, I messed that one up. Cobble Kids Preschool Program Scholarship Funds in the amount of $9,000 from the United Way Community Investment Education Grant. For Child View Robotics, $250 from Red Wing Rotary Foundation. For Powerade for school donations, we have $3,219.60, donated by Viking Coca-Cola. Grants for school sites 2024 in the amount of $47,689.12 from Red Wing Public School Foundation. Red Wing, designated for the Red Wing High School Food Pantry, $250 from the American Legion Post 54 of Red Wing. For books, donated to Red Wing Elementary Schools in the amount of $4,376.02 from St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation Lombard Book to Read Literacy Fund. Red Wing Seniors from Red Wing Senior High in the amount of $349.72. Also from St. Paul Minnesota Foundation for Hannah Anderson Dickinson's class of 1934 scholarship fund. For graduating seniors from Red Wing Senior High School in the amount of $2,882.46. St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation Demetrius G. and Vivian J. Gelatis Scholarship Fund. To support our music programs in the amount of $1,166.26 from St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation Red Wing Public Schools Music Endowment Fund. Sabbatical opportunities for teachers in the amount of $5,221.13. St. Paul Minnesota Foundation Red Wing Fund for Teachers. And as donated 13 soccer balls and 33 cones to Powell Family Center. No equivalent amount from Kari and Ryan Schaefer. Red Wing Track Team, an amount of $1,500 from Frontenac Sports Teams Club. And last but not least, for Cobble Kids Preschool, in the amount of $2,250 from United Way, Vicky Washout and Pierce Counties.
Wow, very nice, very nice. We'll do a roll call vote. Is there a motion to approve the donations as stated?
Still moved.
Ms. Schoenfelder, I'll second. Any discussion? Just want to say thank you very much. Wonderful donation to all these fine people to these fine events and purposes for the school. So, Ms. Ossendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstead.
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
Ms. Rhodes?
Aye.
Ms. Tipp?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you very much. Business item, cell phone policy. Lagros, Smishek, and Nick Whitman. Where's Nick? Not here.
Just me tonight.
Just you. Solo. Good evening.
Good evening. I need just a moment to get this up correctly. There we go. Good evening. I'm Allegra Smishek, Director of Teaching and Learning and Assistant Superintendent. This evening, I'm going to review a summary from our District Advisory Council meeting where we reviewed the cell phone policy and got some feedback from our community and some general recommendations for your consideration. At our April District Advisory Council meeting, we had elementary and secondary staff, admin, parents, and community members represented. Unfortunately, we did not have any students in attendance that night. And we did note that we had limited high school staff in attendance. We did have a stronger representation from Twin Bluff as far as secondary staff. During that meeting, we reviewed some research regarding cell phones and adolescent brains and the impact, as well as positive opportunities that they provide related to academics. We looked at our current policy, and then we also looked at policies from other districts, the same ones that you reviewed as a board. After that, we facilitated a discussion and had folks meet with sort of group-alike peers, so parents and community members and staff, and then we did a jigsaw, so then we kind of diversified our groups, and then at the end we collected individual feedback through a survey so folks could give some anonymous personal one-on-one feedback. I have shared those survey results with you. In terms of themes, I would say that overwhelmingly they were supportive of no cell phone use in the classroom at any level. In our conversations, cell phone usage doesn't seem to be a very big issue K-4. And the cell phone policy at Twin Bluff seems to be implemented in a way that has been quite successful. There was some mixed opinions of whether or not high school students should be able to use them outside of the classroom. So in the hallways, lunchroom, passing time, folks had different viewpoints on that. But all the feedback I received from that meeting in the survey was no cell phone use in classrooms. In response, I reached out to you all. Thank you for respecting quorum and responding individually about if you wanted additional feedback from staff, if we should do a staff survey for the high school, since that seems to be our area of focus. I had a strong request to get more input from parents and, that should say parents and students. My apologies. Parents and students. So really get more of that voice. And in terms of what additional information we would want from the high school staff, just more about current concerns and possible solutions. So some specific questions were included, like, are there educational needs that our students are using them for? Should they be allowed to listen to music during work time, or should that be like an option that teachers can allow with earbuds if they want? And then what the current impact is on student engagement and achievement. So as we kind of transition into recommendations, I'll just say that I'm still very much willing to create that survey if that's what the board would like to do as the next step. I know this was in the board packet as well for tonight's agenda. There is an MSBA model policy predicted to come out in July, and MSBA is working with the state legislator. So according to the Henton update from MASA, there is a law within the current education policy bill. It's in conference committee, which means the Senate and House are duking it out and getting it to the final hurdle here in the next couple of weeks. So it's likely that there'll be some legislation on this issue as well. I am also informed that Superintendent-elect Joshik has implemented a cell phone policy in his former district. So for all of those reasons, my personal recommendation would be to kind of put this on hold until July so that we can review the MSBA policy, have conversations with Superintendent Joshik with his experience implementing the cell phone policy. If at that time we still want an ad hoc policy, that would allow time to do so in late July or August. I know it's important that if we are changing our practice or our policy, that we need to communicate those expectations to families and staff. I think that would still allow us time to do that in that timeline. And that,
Before we open up to everybody else's question, when did the district advisory committee meet? When did they meet?
monthly, in the evenings,
When was the last meeting?
April 11th, I think.
Questions? Yes.
So we have a copy of the policy in our fifth book tonight, right? And so, under the cell phone use, letter A, students are prohibited from using cell phones and other electronic communication devices during the instructional day. Don't we already have a cell phone policy? So, it's already here.
The discussion needs to be about enforcement and procedures within each school building,
Right.
particularly the high school.
Okay. So the expectations of following our own policies.
We just have to add to it a little bit. And we should look at doing something like that before we start next school year.
Thank you.
One of the things we discussed at the DAC meeting was whether or not a policy should be implemented K-12 or if there should be differential for different levels. Our current policy does not have any differentiation. Emphasizing your point.
I was in a group with staff and we did have a lengthy discussion on that. How it would look like in each building. It really felt like changes really do need to be made until the high school. And then would the high school follow procedures similar to the middle school? Or we were looking at I think it was Albert Lee that had the red light, green light based on the areas of the school, whether you can have your phone out. Obviously that brings up other concerns for staff and teachers and how do you enforce that? But that was the discussion we were having, is it doesn't look different at the high school level. But you have high school admin with us to have that discussion.
I think we heard too that the last time we discussed it was, it's a disruptive means in the classroom for some of the kids. So we need to have a regular conversation about it.
I think that it becomes an issue for substitute teachers too. And then people don't want to sub in high school because they try to enforce the policy, or what it says in the handbook, but then it's not consistently enforced and you get pushback from the kids because they're not a regular person. And that's difficult. We're not setting our guest teachers up for success either. You want to set them up for success.
I think our policy could also use, like, if we're gonna say, so like it says, students are prohibited from using cell phones. But it doesn't prohibit them from having it in their pockets. So when it's like, like this, you're like, hey, put your phone away, like, okay. They've just used it, but like now it's put away. You know what I mean? Where like some other places where it's like, you do not have it out of your pocket at all. It seems, so it's sort of like, don't use it. Seems a little vague, like, I think the intention is there, but it doesn't really have a lot of teeth.
Kind of comes back to procedure. What's the procedure?
Well, when Bob comes on board, we'll kind of jump into it. I like that idea of waiting till he's on board. See how he implemented it and going forward, if we need to what changes we may need to make.
I do think there's an extension to this because there's other devices. So
Mhm.
smartwatches, and other pieces that, so.
iPad.
Okay, we'll just keep the discussion going. That what the board wishes? Okay, thank you.
And yet, I think it'd be interesting to do a student survey too.
I think the students involved, yeah.
Just to see.
So can we do that survey before July? Is that something that's what you want as a board to have the
Right, yes.
student parent survey done
Before school is out.
before, getting those questions answered from the high school staff that Allegra has talked about? We do that to be prepared for July.
I think it's a good idea that the high school here and middle school, if they have, I don't know how much, if it's a bigger issue down there, but I know from the students how to. What do they see as it, get their input, people want to be heard. So,
One of the things we've talked about as a board is how do we bring students in to help us write our policies so that they're meaningful to them, and maybe this is one of them.
and they, give them the framework as to what we're looking for and why we're doing it. All right, move on then, nothing further. Superintendent contract, it says me on here, but I'm gonna turn it over to the negotiating team of Ms. Ossendorf, Ms. Buck, and Ms. Schoenfeld. The new superintendent contract.
Yes, so we, mostly went with the MSBA model policy. Changed up a few things so that it was directly relevant to us, like the insurance, and those pieces were pretty much copied out of our director's, contract. So all of those things were at those levels, like what our current director's contract says. So like insurance contributions and things like that. And, other details like travel expenses and things like that. Otherwise, pretty much all of the MSBA model contract. It's a 3-year contract.
Scott, can you show them anything to add?
Or do you have questions?
It went really smoothly. That was really, it just worked really well together, all of us, and
Everything?
I would just agree with what Anna and Rachel said.
Great. All right, is there a motion to approve the superintendent's contract for 2024 through 2027? Contract years as presented. Want to make that motion?
I'll make the
Ms.
motion.
Schoenfelder makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Ossendorf. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 7-0. Custodial agreement.
I'll give you a break. We were super excited to get to agreement with our custodial group. In the notes, are kind of the highlights, so really pleasure. It was a very purposeful conversation. We did go through mediation to get where we're at, where our custodial building and grounds crew were honored for work. And so, like I said in my updates, we have a couple of others that will be coming forward as well. So I think everybody worked very hard to make sure that this was right. So, you guys want me to highlight all of the things I can? It was a 3% increase in year 1, 3% increase in year 2. There were some clear increments that we added in. So we went from 10 cents to 15 cents per hour, maximum 360. The majority of our contracts, adding in the Juneteenth holiday, was something that was really important. So I'm ready to be a little bit more inclusive in our agreement language. And then obviously one of the bigger pieces in our district is the insurance premium. So a lot of language in that.
Negotiating team, committee, have any questions or any comments? Any comment?
I'll make a motion to approve the 23 through 25 custodial collective bargaining agreement as presented.
Motion by Ms. Stiff, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Schoenfelder. Discussion?
Just thank you all for
Yeah,
that work,
thanks.
that staff and board for this doing this, because it's a lot.
They all kind of come up with one here. So.
They're ready to start over now.
I was gonna say, it's about time.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Non-renewals. Superintendent Wagner, Director of Finance Operations, Ms. Ryder. Who wants to take this one?
Here.
There you want it?
And then it's size 4 font. So
Want me to hold
obviously for the budget cuts, we have some non-renewals of our certified and uncertified staff. For various reasons, so discontinuing some position, lack of students' financial limitations, or various district standards. So we're moving, any other additions? Lisa, I know she had to look through everything, I don't know, Mr. Williams.
This agenda is solely certified.
Yes.
And there is a resolution attached, right?
Questions? Since it's a resolution, we'll do a roll call vote. But yes,
I
this,
would just like to make a comment. I just want to recognize a few of the people that we're talking about here that have put a lot of time and effort and care into our district and the children that we are all responsible for. And so I just want to thank them for the work that they've done. We heard tonight from Janice about Allegra in particular and the work that she's done. We've heard from other community members. And I just really want to recognize that she has made a huge difference in our district. She has started many important projects, ideas, a variety of things that we need to hold on to as a district moving forward, whether she's here or not. I don't want to let her go. And that all of these people have put a lot of work, a lot of time into being here. And so I just really want to recognize that and thank them for everything they've done.
thank you for saying that. Thank you. Yeah, there's some names on here that are hard. I get it. Appreciate everything we've done. We'll make a decision, so. With that, is there a motion to approve the certified non-renewal resolution as presented? Motion by Ms. Rowe, is there a second? Second by Ms. Schoenfelder. Any other discussion?
I just want to comment, there's nothing easy about this.
No, it's not at all. Hopefully, we wish we never had to do it. Resolution, Ms. Schoenfelder,
Aye.
Ms. Rowe,
Aye.
Ms. Tiff,
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstedt,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Never easy, I get. School board retreat, I didn't bring my phone with. We want to wait. Have you talked to Bob at all about this at all?
I have talked to Bob about this.
Okay, does he have some time to?
He didn't give it a date, but physically he will not be present until July 1. But I have, we talked quite consistently until the release on that day, so what we'll do is request some dates from him, and I all of you. And then try to solidify location, hopefully some content. I have been working with Trace on potential ideas. Obviously, it's ideas that you guys would probably like to entertain as well. So.
And will this be like last year when we had the admin team and the board?
Should be.
My idea is,
You what?
my idea is global. It includes us and our admin team. You don't like to think it's a bad thing.
Well, maybe we should look at towards the end of July then, get Bob in here and he'll get his feet on the ground. And, so Mondays or Thursdays, best days for it, or Tuesday, Wednesdays, Saturday afternoon, Sunday evening.
Monday and Thursday.
Mondays are best for you.
Why don't we look at tentatively what is the meeting is, school board meeting July 15th?
Yeah.
The Monday after that.
Lisa.
Yeah.
Tentatively.
Or 29th, maybe.
I know I'm gone that week.
What?
I'm gone that week.
22nd or 29th?
The 22nd.
Well, the 29th.
Did you clear that with the board chair?
You're going. Well, we're gonna have to find a date.
Well, or
Or
do
you're early August.
do we do it on the 15th during the day? And
We did
then
that
have
the
our
last
board
one.
meeting at night?
Yeah.
We do that.
We'll just have to get that.
We're all here, everybody here on the 15th?
Yeah, we'll just
July?
have to get pizza for Rachel.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Do what?
Pizza.
Pizza for Rachel. Food in the
Let's tentatively look at that, okay? The time and all that, so. All right. Upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, which is the 20th. Correct? 5 for the workshop, 5, 6 o'clock for the school board meeting. All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
Moved by Ms. Rowe, second by Ms. Schoenfelder. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Scott, we are adjourned.